Despite what you may think, I really don't care whether or not somebody believes in God, and it's not as though I think you have to believe in God in order to be a rational person.
Well, that is completely fair, of course, the same way that I, as an atheist, don't think that you have to accurately think that God is a big made-up nonsense man in order to be rational either, although it seems to help for some reason. What I find strange is, mate, you made a video called Why Atheism is Not a Rational Belief, and, well, what kind of people hold irrational beliefs? Well, generally people who aren't rational. It's almost like you do actually care what people believe.
But all the same, people will watch my videos and accuse me of being an atheist phobe. Accuse me of seemingly never attacking theism.
Well, I'm sure you definitely aren't going to prove them right in the first part immediately. And the second part is completely freaking unrelated to the first. You can hold a negative bias towards a group and criticize the one that you happen to be in. What are you talking about? It's a classic, actually, I have a black friend defense for a racist. So what? You can still hold stupid beliefs about a group just because one of them happens to put up with your bullshit. And you can, of course, still hold stupid beliefs about atheists while criticizing other theists. But that's mostly because theists hold an astounding number of contrary beliefs to each other. I would in fact posit that you can't really be a devout theist without at least feeling the need to criticize basically everyone else. That's kind of how strong fundamental belief about the nature of reality works.
And it's funny because the reason for this is actually pretty simple. Those who shout at the sky but insist that nothing is up there are far more deserving of criticism than those who simply believe that something is up there.
Wow, I told you he was going to do that. Ignoring couching seemingly all atheists as shouting at the sky, I would argue that none of them do that. Not in anything resembling an unironic fashion anyway, while being an actual atheist rather than those not a true Scotsman because they were born and raised on Proxima Centauri B, knowing nothing of Earth cultures at all kind of way. Theists who say that they're atheists because of whatever reason they have for doing that shit. No, a person who does not believe God is real, an atheist, doesn't shout at the sky because of the godman being there. He's not there. He's not anywhere. And believing he is something that is perfectly reasonable to criticize for any reason, let alone if you were firing mouth sounds into space.
And you can point out, rightfully so, that not all atheists shout at the sky, so to speak. Not all atheists are belligerent, militant, or Reddit atheists.
Straight in with the attempted backtrack, although considering how you end the video...
But you cannot be an atheist and be a reasonable person, because whether or not you hear it yourself, deep down, you are in fact shouting at the sky.
I really doubt you actually mean it, but hey, the best part is, you're still being wrong about it. Because, well, sure, obviously, not all atheists are belligerent or Reddit or whatever. That still doesn't mean that the ones who are shout at the sky. What you're confusing here is passion with some kind of direct admission that actually theists are right and those guys are only mad because of how real God is. It appears your confusion as to why people think you are an atheist phobe is based on your confusion of what it means to be an atheist at all. If you cleared that up, maybe you wouldn't sound like the hater you so clearly are not because you said so.
Likewise, it's not as though all theists are reasonable people either. Belief, for example, is not exactly a reasonable thing. You need evidence and concrete arguments in order to claim to know that something is true.
Oh dear, I think I know where he's going with this. It's going to be the old and very, very, very stupid. Atheists don't have evidence that God doesn't real, so it's the same as theists not having evidence God does real. But that is, of course, not how that works, and simply cannot be how claims about reality should work, since an assertion like, I own a 20-foot replica of my penis cast in solid gold, is a claim that I could make without evidence, sure, but not one that anyone anywhere can be expected to believe if I refuse to show it to anyone. And you know they all want to see it. Same is true if you say there's a supernatural man who made the everything but have no way to demonstrate it. I can quite rightly say, yeah, nah, I don't believe that shit. Ironically, you seem to be making the argument that you have no evidence for God, and somehow that makes you more correct and not less.
However, theists often concede that their belief isn't like a scientific knowledge. They'll say something like, well, yeah, that's what it means to have faith. Whereas when it comes to atheism, there just isn't this same self-awareness.
It has got nothing to do with self-awareness and everything to do with how claims work. You not understanding that is not an indictment of atheism so much as a demonstration that you do not understand how facts function in reality. Faith is the belief in something with little, no, or extremely poor evidence. Atheism is the rejection of that claim being made with little, no, or extremely poor evidence, which is something that requires exactly zero faith to do. It's actually exactly what one should do when extraordinary claims are not only made without similarly extraordinary evidence, but not even mediocre evidence. It's all just bad justification and arguments that don't do anything. Rejecting that shit requires the least faith of basically bloody anything.
Even here in this comment, for example, this person implicitly accuses me of bias despite the fact that I am not agnostic.
After reading the text there, it appears to me that they less think you are actually agnostic, but instead seem to be making the point that, based on your previous definition of agnosticism, that you appear to be that, especially considering they literally try to get you to clarify if you're just a theist, which very much appears to be the case. But regardless of whether you are or not, they could think you're a packet of crisps. It wouldn't change the accuracy of the bias claim, because it's based on your behavior, not what specific worldview you may or may not hold. You really can't just go, aha, I'm not the thing you think I are, therefore I can't be biased. It is a ridiculously stupid deflection, to say the least.
So if I come off as neutral, then maybe I actually am unbiased. And maybe I should ask this person the same question, because he went on to leave a lot of pro-atheist criticism on my other videos after posting this.
Coming off as neutral is absolutely not the same thing as being neutral. It's a tactic. Can't you see by my tone and use of vagaries that I'm actually completely neutral? Just ignore the times where I make sweeping negative statements about the group I definitely don't hate. That doesn't count because I'm not part of some third category someone else thinks I am. If I didn't think you were a dumbass, I would have to assume that you are an extraordinarily disingenuous piece of shit, mate.
If he's agnostic, then why do I only see him defending atheism just as he only sees me defending theism? See, it's just not a reasonable standard, and unfortunately when you see all of these atheists pretending to be agnostics or agnostic atheists, you'll realize that it's a common theme.
Yeah, that bias is just melting away, isn't it? I mean, now agnostic atheists are just pretending to hold that position. That while they can't prove for sure that there is no God, you know, what agnosticism is, that the evidence provided is still not sufficient to hold the belief that there is one, therefore, they're an atheist. Yes, you really can be both, but no, actually, the philosophical definition of atheism is God not real. That is not how definitions work. There can be more than one, and nobody, except for the biggest of twats, is using the strict philosophical definition of pretty much anything to define themselves. Also, at no point does any of this have anything to do with you being biased. Even if every last one of them were Biased McGee of Bias Street, Biaston, Biastopia, that wouldn't have one jot of impact on your own obvious alleged bias. And again, you would have to be either an idiot not to know that, or just trying to deflect from the claim without actually addressing it by pointing at everyone else.
Although, I suppose I'm probably getting ahead of myself. Because the TLDR for all of this is that, yes, I realize that there are atheists who don't shove their beliefs or lack thereof down other people's throats.
Do you understand how vanishingly rare it is for an atheist to come, apropos of nothing, and tell people that God doesn't real? Like, seriously, I can't think of a situation off the top of my head where the expression of an atheist position is not a response to theist claim. I'm absolutely sure it happens, but the vast majority of cases are in fact going to be after a theist has in fact attempted to shove their beliefs down said atheist throats in the first place. I mean, show me one example of an atheist going to someone's house and asking, "Hi, we're from the Church of God Doesn't Real. Do you have a minute to talk about Star Wars?" And I will show you endless examples of missions and door-to-door godbotherers and street preachers and online theists making videos saying atheism is wrong. None of it in response to anyone, but just because you're all so unbiased. It's almost like this is in fact projection of the highest order.
But this is to say that there are atheists who are not annoying or militant. But is that the same as being logical or rational?
Holy shit, you are never ever beating the allegations, are you? Every single time you start to speak, you can't help but say something stupid about us. You might not be one of those annoying atheists who correct me and tell me how wrong I am all the time, accurately pointing out the idiotic nonsense I spew. But even if you don't do that, you're still an illogical, irrational moron. Dude, seriously, for your own sake, just stop and actually listen to the things that you say. You might start to understand why some people might think that you're acting in an unending, intellectually dishonest, bad faith kind of way. I'll give you a clue why. It's because you are. Also, just note, you are proving my point about the theists tending to come to us by you going after atheists who aren't even part of this conversation, but you really just want to drag them in. And when they inevitably tell you to piss off because God's not real, well, then you get to lump them in with all the rest of the bad atheists, which was all of them anyway, but oh well.
Obviously, you could ask, what does it mean for any theological belief to be rational? And I think that's an interesting question, so let's go ahead and answer it. Is there such a thing as rational theism, rational atheism, and where does agnosticism fit into all of this?
First, atheism is not a theological belief. It is a rejection of theological positions. The A in atheism says it all. It means without theism. Now, you could say that it's a position on theism, but it itself is not a theological position, the same way as sitting in my underpants and eating deep-fried whiskey is not a sport. Even if it should be, because I would definitely win. But frankly, my dude, after all your poisoning the well on atheism and how they are all irrational sky shouters, to pretend that this is going to be some fair and balanced think piece is as hilarious as it is obviously dishonest. Also, agnosticism, as stated before, is simply a position on whether we can know God is real, not a position on if he is or not. Presumably, the reason the person before wondered if you were agnostic is because you likely don't think you can know if God is real, making you an agnostic theist. Sorry if that blew your tiny little mind, but it is what it is. I don't make the rules. I just enforce them with an iron head.
First, we have to address a pretty common lie that is perpetuated in our society. This lie being that a thing is rational if it is nice, agreeable, or polite.
Common? How common? I have never heard anyone say that you must be right because you're nice, at least not outside of certain circles. You might be more convincing, but that is not the same thing. Also, if you have ever seen a political debate on pretty much anything even remotely divisive, no one is winning those on taking the softly approach. If anything, if you do that, you're likely to get ripped apart. Frankly, in my experience, the only people I ever see say this are, ironically, theists, who like to say, see, the atheists, they don't think it's bad to swear or talk about a sex, thus proving them wrong and me right, because I'm the world's lamest prude.
While it may be the case that a reasonable person would want to have productive conversations, and in this we allow things like rhetoric and manners to be subsumed by reason, it's not as though, as I've gone over in a previous video, that, for example, a rational argument by its own merit suddenly becomes less rational because it is rude or annoying.
And just look at you being rude and annoying and irrational all at the same time. You're a real triple threat guy. Well, at least in terms of defining atheists and your inability to understand how you can potentially both be a thing and recognize it in others. And that would be in no way a contradiction, especially when the original person makes no claims to being the thing or not themselves, but you desperately try to make sure everyone knows how not a piece of crap you are. It is funny, though, how convenient this position now is for you, when up till now, you heavily implied that the Reddit atheists, aka any atheists who dares to express their beliefs when a theist speaks, instead of being silent as they very well should be, are in fact irrational as a matter of course.
If I give you proof that the Earth is round, it wouldn't change the proof I just gave you if I then called you an idiot afterward. It may make it so the argument is less persuasive, and in this it may not be a reasonable tactic, but if the problem is that insults are irrelevant to the argument, then we can hardly turn around and claim that the insult speaks to the argument itself as if it is relevant now that it is convenient for us.
How is this even remotely relevant? Yes, we don't discern whether or not a statement of fact is true by the fact that someone did or didn't call you an asshole when they said it. We do it using evidence. A claim lives or dies based on whether or not you can prove the damn thing. And if you can't prove it, then whoever you're talking to is completely reasonable and rational to reject your claim entirely. The Earth being the shape it is a fact that we can prove. Anyone who rejects that thing we can prove is then rejecting evidence. But someone rejecting a claim that you seem to agree has nothing backing it up is an entirely different ask.
Arguments must be judged by their own merit and not by how they make us feel.
Irony. Yeah, of course. Theists never base their position on the feelings they have about how God is real and really likes them and they are special and have an important place in the universe. While atheists, well, I bet you think we just love the fact that we don't have any of that necessarily, that we have to put in the actual legwork to find meaning and take our lumps when it comes to our mistakes instead of seeking vindication and validation from our imaginary best friend. And look, I know that this isn't all theists, and maybe even you don't do that shit specifically, but this is all more than common enough that you should know it's a thing.
And so, for this reason, in an intellectual capacity, we cannot look down our noses at people who are confrontational about their beliefs. Because it's strange to take people who make videos about their atheistic beliefs and call them Reddit atheists, or take people spreading their religion and call them Bible thumpers, simply because they share their beliefs in a way that is dismissive of other beliefs.
No, I guess it wouldn't. So why did you do it? Also, it's rarely about tone when people refer to certain types of theists as Bible thumpers. It's entirely about the content. That being, the Bible is the only thing that one should rely on to say anything about anything. That's a Bible thumper. Someone saying they believe in God and atheists are all sorts of negative stereotypes is not a Bible thumper, necessarily. The same way, just because I defend atheism from people who say shit like that, and calling them an idiot for it doesn't make me a Reddit atheist. I would have to actually go to Reddit for atheist shit for that, which I just don't do. No, my friend, what we are is assholes, with one major difference. You don't know what the hell you're talking about, making you an embarrassing asshole too.
People are quite often dismissive of flat earthers. Would it be the case that a person would be irrational if he started up a YouTube channel debunking flat earthers simply because he is quote-unquote forcing his beliefs on others?
Of course you can't even distinguish between forcing beliefs and refuting an argument. When a flat earther makes a claim and anyone with the intellectual level above a bag of pebbles explains why it's wrong, that is simply someone explaining reality to someone who can't fathom how it functions, often using simple science and long-established methodologies, for then the person on the other side to promptly ignore it and throw out a bunch of logical fallacies that they don't understand. But no one in that interaction is really attempting to force their beliefs on others. Well, the flirt might if they were capable of it, but they aren't. Whereas, if you live on a planet where the vast majority of people believe a thing and governments are filled with people that believe that thing and often want to have those beliefs enshrined into law and or the education system and beyond, that is forcing people at the very best to have to interact with that ideology constantly. Which is something that in the country that you likely live in is not being done by freaking atheists, goddammit. And the fact that you definitely are just going to ignore that is extremely telling.
No, again, we can question what this would accomplish. We can ask if he took a very negative and condescending attitude, would he be able to convince anyone who didn't already agree with him? And we can say the same thing about religious people and atheists to explain why there may be some rationale, but ultimately when we draw the distinction between those good atheists and those bad militant ones on the basis of tolerance alone, this is the metaphorical plug in the dam that intentionally prevents us from realizing that atheism, in any extent, is not a rational belief.
And there it is again. Atheism is an irrational belief, which ironically is one of the most irrational beliefs that a theist can have. Because for starts, any belief can be reasoned into if you don't have access to accurate information. So funnily enough, I sincerely doubt whatever your alleged reasoning, it will neither be reflective of reality or even remotely demonstrate that atheism is anything but, as I have stated time and again, a response to a claim that none of you can actually demonstrate in a way that convinces any atheist. And frankly, to reject such claims is about the most reasonable, rational, and any other thing you can do. Crying about it while pretending not to be crying about it, on the other hand, is about the most opposite to thing there is. Bye!